Hi guys, and welcome to this month's business Patreon video. If you can hear horses behind me, it is because I'm sat in my partner's garden and there are horses directly over in that field. I was going to film inside but it's a bit echoey, so I thought I'd just bring the camera outside. I have written a ton of notes. I will make them into like a PDF kind of format like I did for last month's video. It's all about fine art prints today, and I really hope you find this useful. I didn't realise how much content I could write and film about all of this. So, and also, next business video will be a video all about planning, because I know a lot of you have requested videos like that, like how to organise your commission diary, how to set your diary out and things like that, for whether it's for commissions for original artwork, for online content, things like that. And I found a really great way of doing it. I only discovered it about a couple of weeks ago, but I've made it such a big part of my life now, and is how I'm delivering this video to you today. So I have all my notes written on my Mac here. I've got my cup of tea. As I said, I will make all of this into like a PDF format, but I'll probably go into a few more details maybe in the video, so you might want to take notes. It's probably going to be a bit of a long one. I've got a lot of notes, so if I get a bit hoarse after a while, it's alright. It's 7:30 right now in the evening, so we've got a little bit of time before it gets dark. Okay. So, fine art prints and everything you need to know about producing fine art prints. But first of all, why produce fine art prints? Now, there are a ton of benefits to producing fine art prints, and you can really incorporate them into your business model if you haven't done already. It's a great way of adding some extra income. So the first benefit I would say to adding these to your business model, so to speak. So the first benefit would be that you get more reward from one piece of work. So normally you might do an original drawing and then sell it on, and that is it, job done. You will not ever earn any more revenue than the original price that you gave and what that customer bought that original piece of artwork for. Obviously, when you offer limited edition prints, it gives you a longer source of that income. So and also not only that, so it obviously gives you a more passive income as well. So you don't actively have to keep producing more work to get money, if that makes sense. You are literally producing one piece of artwork, making prints from it, and then selling those prints, whether it's from an online shop or whether it's from your Etsy store, whatever it may be. It is a really good passive income. There's not a lot of work that goes along with it. I will talk all about passive incomes and active incomes in the future, and why it's important for you to have both, especially at the moment. So yeah, you get more reward from one piece of artwork. Not only that, you have a wider reaching audience. So what I mean by that is, you might be a little bit limited to the sort of people who can buy your original artwork, whereas if you offer limited edition prints, you can offer them at a lower price point and you can offer more of them. So you will have a wider audience, especially as it's sort of a lesser outlay than an original piece of artwork itself. And as I said, it is a fantastic way to earn a little bit more money each month if you implement it correctly. And I know it's really hard, because you're probably going to say, well, Bethany, how do you sell fine art prints? And I will come on to that, maybe not in this video, but definitely down the line, how to create an audience that are willing to buy from you, because it's it's crucial to be able to make an art business that's fully sustainable, especially nowadays. And it is possible. You don't have to have the term starving artist anymore. It's really not necessary. It's a bird. Anyway, so what is a fine art print, you're probably asking, and what makes it different between something you print off from your printer to something I would print off and sell as a fine art print. So if you were looking at the term fine art print, you're probably looking for the term Giclée, and it's pronounced I can't pronounce it correctly. I think it's a French term, and it basically means to spray. That's literally the translation. And what the meaning sort of behind to spray is that how the printer sprays its ink onto the paper. So it refers to the way an inkjet printer works. So taking that a bit further, the large format printers that are used for fine art printing literally spray the tiniest drops of ink in lots and lots of different areas to generate your, you know, a bigger piece, so your fine art print. And because it works in such a way, it can precisely colour match different areas and apply ink precisely, which gives a high quality print which will obviously match closely to your original artwork. One thing that's really, really important to say is not all inkjet printers can produce these fine art prints. You know, your general office printer, whether it's inkjet or not, will not be able to deliver the fine art print quality that you and your customers will be looking for. So right here I have got one of my fine art prints. This is of Dylan, my little cute duckling, and obviously it's mounted, it's ready to go to its new home. I'm delivering it tomorrow. But you probably won't be able to see this. I will insert photos. I think that's probably the best option. I will take photos or maybe a really small video to show you the difference between an unmounted. I'll print one off from my fine art printer, and I will also show you the difference between printing off my office printer as well. So you should be able to see exactly what I mean as to how amazing this print quality is compared to a normal office printer, regardless of whether it's inkjet or not. So let's talk more about what actually creates a fine art print. So fine art, zikli, however you say it, requires 4 different elements to produce the actual print. It requires a high resolution scan, the right inks, the right paper, and also having the right printer, as I've just explained. When I talk about resolution, I'm talking about the initial scan or photograph, depending on sort of the way you either scan or photograph your artwork to produce the prints from, you know, to capture the current artwork. Personally, I scan. I find it much easier. I've used both in the past. I've used companies that photograph my artwork, and I've also used companies which scan. Personally, when I was bringing my printing in-house, it was cheaper and more affordable for me to scan the artwork myself. So the scanner or camera used to capture your original artwork must be able to either photograph or scan at such a high resolution. Now don't let this put you off. It sounds more scary than what it actually means. So just to give you an idea of the resolution that I'm talking about, is a normal digital camera will capture a digital photo at 72 dpi, and that means dots per inch, whereas I tend to scan my artwork at 720 dots per inch. The minimum requirement for a fine art print is usually around 300 dpi sort of number, but as I said, personally I do it at 720. It's what I set my scanner up to, and it's what works best for me. The more dots per inch, then the more dots of colour that can be printed, and therefore the better quality, the better amount of detail you will be able to get into your fine art print. So coming on to suitable paper and ink. For paper and ink, they must be considered archival. What archival actually means in terms of the ink, it is designed specifically to be resistant to fading and also resistant to weathering, so it won't fade over long periods of time. You know, if it was left out in the sun even, it is really meant to be the highest quality ink that you can buy. And also using an archival paper generally means that the paper is such good quality, it's almost like I think it is cotton rag, and it won't yellow or fade or crumble, maybe like you see in old newspapers do over time. They really sort of fall apart, don't they? Whereas like my fine art print, the paper I use is archival, so it's meant to last. It's almost like museum quality, that's what it technically means. So if you were to put it into a museum for 100 years, it would still be the same quality now as it would be in 100 years. I like to say, and I put it all over my website, and a lot of people who do archival fine art printing say that they expect their prints to last for about 75 years because we use the highest quality museum grade materials for that. Archival inks tend to be pigment based instead of the usual dye based, which is what you would find from your general office printer, inkjet printer. And so coming on to the right source or the right type of printer, because I know it is a total minefield. There are so many fine art printers. I had to do a lot of research, and when I actually edit together the video where I show you exactly how I make my fine art prints, I will talk to you more about why I chose the printer that I chose and why it works so well for me as an artist. So printers that are used for fine art prints generally are large format printers. So what I mean by this is they can print up to normally about A1 if not A0. Personally, my printer prints A2, so I can print anything from very small to A2. So if you American or international, I think it works out. You don't have the same sizing as we do in the UK. Hang on, let me do some research. I'll be right back. So A2 paper. I should have googled this before I started. Paper in centimeters. So for you who are international, who work in centimetres, an A2 piece of paper measures about 42 centimetres by just under 60 centimetres, so it's pretty big, and that's the size of my printer in-house. Now if I would want anything printed bigger, I would have to outsource it, because then we're talking about the massively large format printers, and they are huge. So yeah, I generally outsource them. But these larger models of printers can generally take up to about 12 different ink cartridges, which will obviously give you sort of a wider range than the general. I think it's about 5 a normal office printer can take, so it's going to take up to 12. So it gives you a much bigger colour span, and it allows the colours to be a lot more vibrant, and it can really sort of mix the colours well. Personally, my printer, as I said, is not the massive one. It prints up to A2, and it takes, I believe, 9. It takes 9 cartridges. Now one of them is a photographic black, or sort of like, and I use the matte black for my fine art. I don't use it. If I was to change the paper and put it into a glossy photo paper, then I would have to use the other sort of black. But so my printer, in short, without me rambling, takes about 8 cartridges to do the work that I need it to do. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is in-house printing versus outsourcing your printing. I have done both, and I am going to be producing a story time over on my YouTube channel about the absolute disaster that I had when I first started producing my fine art prints, and hopefully it will give you a few sort of little pointers and things to pick up on, and things to avoid when you are looking at outsourcing your printing. Now initially I would say it is a really good idea to outsource the printing. First, for multiple different reasons, but especially if you're a complete beginner, and this is not, I didn't mean that in a patronising way. All I mean from the beginner is someone who's just literally starting out, who's never produced a fine art print before, and doesn't really know where to start. It's a complete minefield, and sometimes it is easier to go to a company who can do it all for you. So the process that they usually follow, from my own experience, generally goes a bit like this. So initially they will discuss their process. They will generally, if they're a good company, they will show you their equipment, they will show you the printers that they're going to use. They'll also discuss the different papers that they think would suit your artwork. It's really important for obviously the initial meeting. You take your portfolio along you, or maybe you've got a piece in mind that you would like to get printed. A good printer or a good printing company will be able to give you sort of lots of examples of their printing work. They will be able to show you exactly how the process works. They will give you a true costing of everything, and they will just be very honest and upfront about everything. So the next step, when you're happy and if you trust them, the next step for them to be to either scan or photograph your work. So it completely depends on their preference and your preference. If you would like your artwork photographed, you would have to find someone who produces fine art prints and photographs them. If you're happy with the artwork to be scanned, then I wouldn't say you can quite easily find a company that can scan your artwork to produce fine art prints, but it's more common play, I think, for people and fine art companies to scan rather than photograph. But the companies, from my own experience, who photograph are generally quite anal, and they would be like, we don't scan because it knocks the colour out and does this, it does that, you won't get a good enough quality. I've, as I said, had both. I've had a company that photographs the artwork, and I've also had a company that scans the artwork. Personally, can't tell a lot of difference, and I know my prints and my artwork inside out, and I wouldn't really worry too much about whether it's a scan or a photograph that they're taking. So the next thing they would do is they would colour match, or so they'll scan it, and then from there they will edit it in Photoshop. So when I mean they edit their artwork, or your artwork, is they would generally colour match it to make an accurate representation of the original artwork. So they will sometimes erase the background. If there's, you know, sometimes you'll be working, you've probably seen me do it on some tutorials, I will make a smudge, there's something that's really hard to get out, and those little sort of dots of dirt that maybe got ingrained, you want your artwork to be completely clean. So they will edit and sort of remove any noise, background noise and things like that from the final scan or photograph, and make your artwork as close to the original as they possibly can. Now obviously, as I said, when I show you the process of colour matching, if you're going to a professional, there are companies out there that will try and fob you off and they'll say we can't get it as close as a match as you would like. Don't use them. They are, you know, because there are plenty of companies. If you're near me in Portsmouth, I know several companies that are really, really honest and good people and do a fantastic job at producing fine art prints for you and get the best colour match. Like the company that I've used recently for my large format printing, he will take the artwork, he will scan it, he will colour match it, he'll give me a call in a few days' time when it's ready. He will produce a very small, and I'm talking about A5 size, proof of the final scan, but he will also create a life-size almost strip of the sort of part of the piece, and he will, you know, in front of me, he will lay it on top of the original artwork, and 99.9% of the time I cannot tell the difference between the scan or the fine art print and the original artwork. He gets it bang on. He takes hours, and that is the quality and that is the service that you are after as an artist who wants to deliver high quality prints. So as I said, you know, that made me touch on it a little bit. You'll after they scan it and colour match it, you will then get what's called an artist proof. So that is the initial sort of you know, for you to approve and say, yeah, it's to the quality, it's to the paper, it's, you know, there's a spec that I would like, and also it is, you know, you've done a good job, and, you know, you can sign it off. And the next thing that you would do from there is what's called sizing up. So you can go, you know, if it's anything like the printer that I've used in the past, they will discuss different sizes that they think will work well for your artwork. If you've got a size in mind, you know, for things like this, for example, Dylan, I drew him quite small. He would never look that great as a big print because he's a little duckling, so I wanted him to be sort of a 6x8 so he can fit into a standard 10x12 size. So that is what works really, really well for prints like this. I've got I'll take you inside a bit later and show you. In fact, I'll do it now. So here you can see an example of my hounds. Obviously it's framed, and there's a bit of reflection here from the glass, but this is a fine art print, which the printing company that I was telling you guys about, that's, you know, this is what the quality of the print that they have delivered, and I love it. It is absolutely beautiful. It matches the original so well, and it's just absolutely stunning. Obviously, yeah, you have to ignore the fact it's got obviously just normal glass on it. But over here, however, we have got my stag, the original stag, and it's got invisible glass, and you cannot tell that it's got glass in it. Absolutely obsessed. So my stag and one of the prints of the hounds is just taking up residence at my partner's house at the moment. But yeah. So obviously, as you just seen from the hounds, they are a lot larger, and I can't print them in myself. So when in terms of sizing up, that hound print wouldn't have looked very good if it was very small. It needed to be very impacted, like it needed to be, you know, quite a high impact piece, so it needed to be quite big. So that's sort of the brief that I went into my printer. I said I want this to be quite big and I want it to match the originals, and so obviously he sized it to the specification that I required and that I asked for. So when in terms of sizing up, you know, if you've got an idea of how much space or how big you want the print, also but you got to bear in mind, if you work like me and work on white, then obviously you can put X amount of white space and make the print any size you want. And so, but obviously the bigger the per print, the more your printer will charge you for the extra space. And one thing that it is really important to know when you are outsourcing your printing and you're printing onto, you know, they're using a very large format printer, there's a chance that they will ask you to you know, make your prints X amount up. So what they mean by that is the hounds, for example, it wasn't financially savvy to produce one print at a time, it made sense to do 2 side by side, so it took up, you know, more space and therefore reduce the cost per image. Whereas something like Dylan, I think he could be printed 6 up, so it means I had to pay and have 6 printed at one time, which wasn't a big deal for this because they sold really well. However, if you're unsure about whether something's going to sell that well, it can be a little bit difficult, you know, when you get told, oh, you need to print 6 of these in order to make it cost effective for you. So yeah, it's just something to bear in mind. But that's, you know, one of the negatives to outsourcing or printing. You know, another negative could be that outsourcing can get very, very expensive. Now, as I said, I will be filming a story time over on my YouTube channel because I have been through the mill with the first company that I asked to do my printing. They were just awful in so many different ways. I'm so lucky I did find another company who really restored my trust. But outsourcing or printing can be quite expensive. There are a lot of different costs and factors that you've got to almost factor in, so to speak. So you've got, if I just talk you through the process again, you know, you have to pay for the initial scan. Now, the company I used recently, depending on, in fact, didn't even depend on the size of the artwork. There was a one cost to scan and proof the artwork, which was £50. So regardless of whether it was a very small piece or a very big piece, it was a standard £50 for them to scan and for them to produce that proof, which means that obviously they went ahead and edited it, got rid of the noise, and produced the 2 sort of like the small print and also the strip print. So, you know, when you've outlaid the £50, and then when you size up the print, they can give you another price, and they can say, okay, so for example, Dylan, I think he was printed 6 up. I think per print it cost me £6 to make him into a print. You know, each print cost me £6. Now, I could retail I think I retailed these out initially for about £35. So obviously there was, you know, there was profit to be made. It's something I will come on to, how to make, you know, how to choose the prices for your fine art prints, but it's worth considering that when you are outsourcing, it can be quite expensive, and you've got to be sure that you can make your money back off them if you can. So another negative to outsourcing or printing is that you can't print on demand. Obviously, I've just spoken to you that you've got to have the chance that you've got to have X amount printed at one time, and then they can be stuck in storage, and if they don't sell straight away, it can be very, very frustrating because you're thinking, when on earth, how am I going to market these, like how am I going to sell them? Whereas obviously if you are printing in-house, the chance that you can print on demand. So nowadays I get an order and I can just print, I can come onto my Mac, I can plug in my printer, and voila, I can just print the order. So there's no waste and there's no excess cost. So as I said, for the first 4 years of my art journey and my art career, I outsourced my printing, and as I said, I used 2 different companies, and they taught me a lot. The first one taught me how to be business savvy. The second one taught me everything I needed to know about fine art printing, which is great. I'm really lucky that I had both experiences, regardless of whether the first one was absolute dog. You get what I mean. So the first 4 years I exported and outsourced and did everything I needed to do like that. And that obviously gave me a lot of knowledge that I needed for when I decided to bring the whole print process in-house. So I bought my own printer, scanner and things like that. So after I think it was probably about 18 months ago, I bought my Epson. It is the Epson SureColor P800 fine art printer, and as I said, it prints up to A2. I've had it for 18 months and I absolutely love it. It hasn't caused me any touch wood, no problem so far. It's great. The price of that printer, including, I think it came with some sort of starter inks. So when I say starter inks, the normal ink cartridge is 80ml. This came with 60ml inks, so it didn't, you know, it was a bit short, but it wasn't anything, no, it still lasts me a long old time. So that initial outlay was about, I think it was £1,200. So I don't know what it is in American dollars, and I've got a fly. If you see anything buzzing in front of you, it's because there is a fly. Another thing and another cost you have to factor in is buying a scanner. Now I bought also an Epson scanner. It is the Epson Perfection V600, I believe. It's not with me, it's at home, but yeah, it's the Epson Perfection V600. which it is an A4 scanner, which I know can be a little bit problematic if you are trying to scan bigger pieces of work, but I will show you a video on how I counteract that and how I combat that problem, because now I have worked out a way to scan A1 pieces of artwork on my A4 printer, so on my A4 scanner, which is great, really really good. It takes a little bit of time, it's a bit fiddly, but really really good, which means I don't have to outsource anything anymore, unless obviously I want to print to the size of the house. So that scanner, I believe it retails out at about just under £300. I think I bought it for £270, I believe, but it's around, it's not massively expensive, but it is quite expensive. But it scans up to a really really high resolution, and it was a scanner a lot of other artists were using, so I thought, well, you know, I'll do what everyone else is doing and buy that scanner too. So some other things that you have to factor in when you're initially thinking about producing fine art prints is I bought this. I bought my Mac, which obviously was slightly necessary / unnecessary. I didn't have any really decent technology at home. I was working on a very slow family PC, so after I earned a little bit of money, I bought this, which has radicalised my business, so to speak. I run everything off this now. It's absolutely great. I'm not saying, you know, you have to go out and buy a new laptop. You definitely don't if you've got technology that works for you. I didn't at the time, but this is powerful enough to allow me to run Photoshop, so which is obviously the next purchase that I made. So I bought my Mac, I bought Photoshop, I bought which is I think it's a monthly subscription. I think it's only about £10 a month, or for 20. It's not an awful high amount of money, and I use Photoshop for quite a lot of stuff. I use it for YouTube thumbnails, I use it for scanning, I use it for, you know, producing greetings cards, I use it for everything. So, you know, for me it's worth the investment, and I definitely use it and get my full sort of like monthly value out of it every month. So but yeah, so that is another cost. So I bought a Mac, I bought a subscription to Photoshop, I bought my printer, and I bought my scanner, and obviously then after that you've got to continue to buy paper and inks and just maintenance of your printer, depending on how much you use it. So when it came to finding the right paper for my prints, I kind of went off what I knew. So the company that I was using, who did all my large format printing, all the hounds and things like that, they were printing onto a paper that was called Somerset Velvet, and it was a Somerset Velvet fine art paper. So I went online, I realised that you could buy it in sheets, and obviously my printer, excuse me, you could buy a roll feed. I will talk to you again in another video, because otherwise this video is going to go on forever about the sort of like why it's, you know, the difference between a roll feed printer and also a sheet printer. I bought a sheet printer, and I buy these Somerset Velvet in sheets, whether it's A4, A3 or A2, and it's a company in the UK, and they just post out. You can generally buy, I think, the Somerset Velvet on Amazon in definitely A4 and I think A3 as well. So when I've got really stuck, I've ordered it on Prime before, which is really handy because there's not many fine art sort of papers that you can do that with. But I really like the quality. It's sort of like got a little bit of a hammered effect, so you know, it's got a bit of texture. It prints beautifully. As I said, I print Dylan, I print all my most of my fine art prints now myself, and I just absolutely love the quality, and the inks and stuff, I just work beautifully with it as well. So the next thing, and sort of moving on to the second part of this video, which is more about sort of the actual I think I've tried to cover actually the foundations of the materials and sort of the common practice of fine art prints, but now, you know, we're coming to the business side of producing the fine art prints and the decisions that you have to make, regardless of whether you're doing it in-house or doing it externally. So the first thing, you've got to decide whether you want to produce open edition prints or limited edition prints. Now, it is one of the biggest decisions you will have to make, possibly as an artist. It's really, really hard, and there's no right or wrong answer to how many, or whether, you know, how many prints you do, or whether you want to do them limited or open edition. And there's plenty of benefits to both. I'm just going to cover some of the basics in this video today. obviously the two main benefits that came straight to my head when I was drafting this video is that the open editions, it's completely unlimited. You know, it's never going to run out. It could potentially source your income forevermore of one particular, you know, image that you love, or your customers love. You know, you can keep printing it forevermore. And also you don't have to track anything, so you don't have to track the limited edition numbers, you know, how far you are through the print run, where your orders are going maybe. You know, you can just almost like just be like, oh yeah, another order, print it out, you know, off it goes kind of thing. You don't have to think anything more to it than that. You don't have to worry about you know, numbering each print and certificate, and you know, writing, keeping a note of everything, etc, etc. However, the negative to having open edition prints is that they might not fetch a high enough value for you. So if you are creating limited edition prints, that you can create a little bit of demand around them, and as I said, I'll come on to that in a bit. But if you are doing open edition, then people might not feel as rushed to buy it, because they're not, you know, there's not that much hype, there's not that much demand around them, because people know they're going to be there for the longest time, so they can go, oh well, it's going to be there next month, I'm just going to come back next month and buy it. Whereas obviously if you do limited edition, people feel a little bit more, oh, it's limited. I don't know, it's a bit psychosemantic almost. It's just going to make people think, oh, you know, maybe I don't want to miss out on this, and it's a really good opportunity, I'm just going to purchase it now. So it makes people almost a little bit more impulsive. And also limited edition prints can be a little bit more valuable to customers because there is a bit more demand around them. They can often fetch a higher price than the open edition prints because you can create the hype around them. And you know, because no more prints can be produced after the final print has been sort of finalised, it's been printed, it's been sold, nothing more can happen after that. I've heard sometimes that, you know, publishers, if you work with the publisher, then when the entire run sells out, sometimes they would just delete all the files, they would delete everything, like it's job done, finished, end of. And so yeah, so that means obviously you can create a bit of hype and demand and a bit of like, this is selling out, buy it quick kind of thing. But however, the sort of like the downside of doing all of that is that you've got to be really on top of your admin. You've got to really make sure you're tracking everything. You've got to make sure you don't repeat any of your numbers, and you know, you can't be like, oh, I'm going to sell number 4 today, but actually number 4, was it last time the last order, was that number 4? You know, you've got to really be on top of your game. If you sell number 4, make a note. I've got big old spreadsheets where I keep track of absolutely everything to do with the business and how many prints I sell of each thing. Also, when you do limited edition prints, and I don't know whether it works for open edition, because I know it's definitely limited edition, is you have to generate what's called a certificate of authenticity. Now, you're going to probably say, okay, well, what is a certificate of authenticity? And it's a bit of a mouthful, I know. But think of it like the red bottoms of Louboutin shoes. They are so iconic, right? Or you maybe, you know, you went and if you were a baller, you went and bought a Rolex. It would come with paperwork to prove that Rolex was absolute, like, the legit thing. It wasn't a fake, it was like signed off, it was numbered maybe. You know, I think they're all made by hand, aren't they? Like, they're all bespokely made, so it was signed off by X amount of people. Like, you know you were buying the real deal with the amount of paperwork that comes with it. So the certificate of authenticity for your artwork works in a similar way. So it basically tells the buyer that it is a legitimate piece of artwork from the artist themselves. And it provides a good sense of worth, importance around the artwork itself. And I believe that if you're an art collector, or if you know someone who's an art collector, they will not buy a piece of artwork unless it comes with a certificate of authenticity. Like, it is a big old deal for a lot of people. So regardless of where you are in your art journey, it is a really, really great thing to do to incorporate certificates of authenticity. You know, you might think, oh, is it really worth it? I'm only starting out. Of course it's worth it. You know, if you really get you know, if you grow your audience and you start selling lots and lots of work, and you know, I've had print runs that sold out, and the only reason they've sold out is because I created that amount of demand, and I created an audience that wanted to buy. So obviously there are plenty of examples of what to include in your certificate of authenticity. I'm just going to show you a quick example of what mine looks like. Obviously it has got cellophane on it, and I don't know whether the camera will focus in on that. I'm hoping it will, but So I've got obviously my logo. If I come round to here, it's got my logo. It's also got a certificate of authenticity. I've just put a box around it. I generated these myself. You can do it on Photoshop, or you can do it on, I think, no, actually I did this in Publisher or InDesign or whatever you're working with. So it reads as follows. It says, "This certificate of authenticity issued by Bethany Veer, the artist, documents the year of issue." No, it doesn't. That's a bit awkward, isn't it? Right, it's meant to. I've changed this recently. Documents the year of issue and the total edition size of a limited edition print. Do what I say, not as I do. I'll start this again, sorry. The certificate of authenticity issued by Bethany Veer, the artist, documents the year of issue and the total edition size of a limited edition reproduction of original artwork and verifies that no individually numbered and signed prints will be duplicated within the edition. The artist further ensures that upon final sale of the stated quantity of the limited edition prints, this edition will be closed and the digital print files will be permanently locked to prevent further use. The original artwork and digital files remain property of the artist at all times and may not be copied, distributed or reproduced at any time. Really important. It's basically just like hovering your arse. And then from there I've got a title, so I just pop the title in. I've got the original artwork, I've got coloured pencil or watercolour paper, I've got the paper, which is Somerset Velvet, I've got the ink type, which is UV encapsulated pigment ink, I've got the print number on here, which is 94 out of 175, and I've got my artist signature. Now, I stopped putting the date on all my artwork probably about 2 years ago, because I spoke to several publishers and they basically said if you put a date on your artwork, it really sort of ties you into that year. So I used to put Bethany, and then I'd put sign it off, and then I'd put 2020. But if that print was still sat there in 5 years time, several different people said to me, well, just, you don't have to put the date because it will date it. People will think, well, why, might think maybe, why has it been sat there for so many years? So I just stopped putting the date on anything. So I lesson learned, I need to go and change that, but for now you get sort of what I mean. Okay, so obviously have I spoken to you yet about artist proofs? No. So when there's so many different things that go in with the production of fine art prints as an artist. When you are producing limited edition prints and the initial stages of producing that, obviously I spoke to you guys about the proof that you will receive as an artist, whether you do it yourself, whether you do it outsource it and have a company produce your artwork prints for you. They will give you what's called an artist proof. Now, you're probably going to say, okay, well, why are they still a big deal? Aren't they just like a proof for you to sign off and go, yeah, okay, I want that, I'm happy with the print quality, etc. Well, no, there is a bit more to it than that. So when you are checking and colour matching your prints to the original artwork, this is obviously called the proofing stage, and I've obviously spoken to you guys about that previously. Now, traditionally, the artist proof was kept by the artist for many years and, added to their personal collection forevermore. But nowadays, they're often sold either with the limited edition print run or afterwards. Now, if an entire print run has sold out, for me, I will offer the artist proofs after that. Each proof is technically different because the first time you print something off, it might be slightly off with the colour. Next time it still might be slightly off with the colour. Next time, you just do subtle adjustments every time you print, and each one is sort of different, sort of a bit more unique. It is a bit more individual. So therefore, the artist proofs can kind of command a higher price than the general limited edition prints. They can't obviously go for crazy money, but they can definitely. I know artist proofs that go for a big artist that can sell their artist proofs for a lot of money. Right, so obviously there are laws and legalities behind artist proofs, because you can think, well, I can just print X amount of artist proofs, then for the art I can earn a bit more money and that will make it open edition. It doesn't really work like that. Obviously there are some sort of legalities behind it. So depending on how many prints in your total edition, so how many prints you decide to do in your limited edition, will dictate how many artist proofs you can deliver to your audience. So it generally works out about 10%. So say I did a limited edition print run of Dylan, for example. There was 105 total editions of him ready to be printed. So I can generally do 10%, so I could offer 17 or 18 prints as artist proof. So it's still quite a high number. I probably wouldn't personally do more than 12 of him maybe, and there are different ways that you can make more money from your prints, but again, the video is going to go on forever, so I'll cover that in sort of a second part to this video. When it comes to artist proofs, they work exactly the same way as these limited edition fine art prints. The only difference being is you would put, say, 0-1 out of 12 if you were going to do artist proofs out of 12, and then you put AP next to it, and then you put on the back artist proof. One thing actually is really, really important when we talk about numbering, and it's something that I learned when I first started this print journey, and I sometimes see people do it, sometimes I don't, and I think it's really, really worth knowing. If you are starting a print run, you might just put 1/ number, like, so I could have started this and going 0-1 out of 75. Or 1 out of 75. Now, I know people that would just put 1 out of 75, but it means that say if someone's take off the cellophane, they could remark this and do whatever they wanted. It could be 61 out of 175. So I always put it as 0-1. It just means that everything is very finalised. There's no sort of like wishy-washy like areas, like, if that makes sense. I think it's something I learned years back, and I think it's really important to know. Okay, so the next obviously big thing is knowing how many limited edition prints to offer in your limited edition print run, because technically there's no right or wrong answer, right? You could do 1 or 5, or you could do 500. There's no sort of right or wrong answer, but it is entirely down to you as the artist. So usually the more limited the print run, the more hype, the more demand, the higher the value you can command for your original piece of artwork. Your limited edition print, because they're more collectible to the buyer, they're more valuable to the buyer. There's not as many of them. So the way I tend to play my limited edition prints, and again, this is just the way that I work, I don't know how anyone else works, I kind of do it on how unique the piece is. So say, for example, Dylan or a Robin or a Kingfisher piece, something that has been replicated by many different artists in lots of different ways, and there's lots of different coloured pencil artists doing it, then that, you know, to me isn't really that unique, and therefore it's not really worth making a really unique collectible piece. So I personally won't do anything above sort of 175 copies in one edition. I think the highest I will go is probably I'll never go above 200. I think the highest I'll go is about 195. I think I've got a print that's about 195, but I'll never go above the 200 mark. This is compared to when I did my original drawing of Vallejo. Now, when I did that drawing, it was just after his retirement, and there was a huge amount of hype, and there was a huge amount of demand for merchandise around Vallejo. Everyone wanted to remember him. Everyone wanted to sort of be part of that retirement journey, and obviously he had a lot of fans. But that said, it wasn't the entire world, so not everyone knew who Vallejo was, not everyone was sort of a fan of dressage, whereas a lot more people were a fan of sort of like Kingfishers, Ducklings, Robins. So I needed to create a print run that was suitable to a small amount of people, but I knew that people would, if I made it small enough, people would want to buy it because there'd be a lot of hype around it. So it's just sort of almost like trying to be a little bit savvy and trying to predict the market, which I know is not always the easiest to do, but it is definitely doable sometimes. So Vallejo had a lot of really loyal followers and a really loyal audience, so it made sense, as I said, to offer a very limited print run and keep the price relatively high. So I released 45 prints in total. That was the initial print run I did of Vallejo, and I priced them each one at £145. It was a mistake because they all sold out in 4 days. I think 4 days. The artist proofs sold out. I did 4 or 5 artist proofs, and the original. It all sold out within a week. I could have probably put them up. I probably could have done 75 or even 95, and I definitely could have put them up for about £195. Less than that, but you know, you can't predict the market that much. I knew I wanted to create a bit of a hype. I knew it was probably going to do okay. After, obviously, he was a world champion dressage horse. He was going into retirement. Charlotte was who she was, who she is. So it was a really marketable print run to do, but obviously you've just got to kind of take a bit of a gamble. So that's the way I kind of structure how many prints and sort of they're not like the way I work with them. So obviously it comes on to the next question of how much should you sell your limited edition prints for? And again, there's no right or wrong answer. You need to cover the cost of producing the print. So as I said, if you're paying for a scan, if you're paying sort of like for the scan and £6 to produce a print size like Dylan, then obviously you need to factor in the cost of maybe your sort of liaison costs to go backwards and forwards to get the proofing, your petrol, your marketing costs, if you have to pay for advertisements on Facebook to try and market them, etc, etc. You need to factor all of that in to your final the price. If you have to pay for a shop front, if you have to pay, if you're going to lose potential money, having transaction fees from PayPal maybe on your website, it's just all little factors that you've got to implement to your final pricing. So in other words, you need to make a profit. Obviously, you're trying to run a business, right? So it might be worth finding artists who are in a similar sort of boat to you, who work in a similar medium, who are at the same sort of stage in their art career, and just see how they're pricing their prints, really. As I said, something that is quite small, mass marketable, I can generally get them down to quite a low price point, whereas something like I want to create a bit of hype around, the Allegro Artist Proofs at the time I think were for about £300 each. So it just definitely depends on how how flexible you are, where you are in your career, how confident you are that your art's going to sell. Sometimes I think for standard A4 prints, regardless of what size they are, I was generally offering them for about £40 up until about a year ago. Sometimes I put them up for £50, depending on how much, if the original has been sat there or if the original sells straight away. I know there's a bit more demand for that print, so I put it up to £50. If the original's been sat there for 6 to 10 months to a year, I generally put them at a slightly lower price point. It just, I don't know, there's no right or wrong answer. You are your own artist, you can run your business how you want to run it. But yeah, as I said, I'd like to keep that. I don't really go massively expensive with my limited edition print runs, because one thing I've learned over the years is the people who buy online are generally more they don't like party with a lot of money necessarily, whereas at a trade show, and the people online generally like to buy prints that are around this size, if not A4, possibly A3, because you go to a trade show or like a country show, you've got to stand there, people generally pick up bigger prints, so like the hounds, the stag, things like that. They just, I don't know, it's things that I've learned over the years. Find people who are in a similar boat to you, and then also, see how much hype there is around each piece. Now, I'm going to talk to you briefly about the bumblebees. I did 2 lots of bumblebees earlier on in the year. I did them after, the first one was after Caroline Flack's death, and the second one was just because the first one did really well. I'm not going to lie, right? When you find something that works, you're kind of going to want to continue it, right? So I did the first print run of the bees, and I drew these 4 bees. As if you go on my Instagram or website, you'll see it's called Be Kind. No, it's not on the website, it's on my Instagram or Facebook if you scroll down far enough. It was called Be Kind, and I didn't really create a lot of hype around it. I just kind of posted a few Instagram posts or Facebook posts, and I think within the first 5-10 minutes of putting them on the website and launching them onto social media, sort of linking and being like, this is what I've done recently, here's a link to the prints if you're interested, blah blah blah, sales went absolutely through the roof. And I thought, okay, people like bumblebees, but I put them at quite a low price point. I retailed them out, I think I did 95 copies, a total edition of Be Kind and dog, and I retailed them out for £35 each, so they were very, very affordable to a lot of people. They were a really nice gift present. People were buying them for their mums for Mother's Day, they were buying them for their grandmas, they were buying them for their partners, they were buying them for, the entire print run sold out in about 4 or 5 days, which was absolutely mental. And then I sold all the artist proofs as well. And one of the things I also did is made them into artist remarks, and I will talk to you in the next sort of part of this video about artist remarks, because, and as I said, different ways that you can make even more money from your limited edition prints if that's a route you choose to go down. So yeah, I mean, there was a lot of hype around the bees at the time. I know a lot of people have decided to do bees of their own, which is absolutely fab, like do what you want. But it was a really, really good money spinner, to be honest, and I didn't really realise how good it would be until the entire print roll sold out. And then 2 months later I came in with Just Be, which was the second piece, and I did a slightly lesser number of prints, but I offered them in 2 different sizes. So instead of doing 1 lot at 95 editions, I did 2 lots at 75 editions each, and I retailed them for the same price, and again they did exceptionally well. So the entire 75 small print run sold out, and I still got a couple of the larger ones. So, you know, bumblebees, people love them. So when you find something that works, you might as well just jump on it and try and make some money, right? And you know, I hope that doesn't come across as like weird, because at the end of the day we're all trying to make a successful business out of our art, right? So the last thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is, before my battery dies, so the last thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is how you need to present your prints. Now obviously this is the last part of the video for this time, but one great way to encourage sales that I found definitely helps me is to present them in such a way that people feel like they're going to get a gift, they're getting a present. You know, you're trying to offer your audience a great service. Now in today's world, especially at the moment, no one really needs art. I'll be honest, and it's brutal, and I'm going to make plenty of videos about this in the future, because no one really needs the services we're trying to offer. There are a lot of artists that are trying to capture their audience and encourage sales at the moment. You know, it's a really, really highly saturated market. There's a lot of coloured pencil artists out there. There's a lot of people who are trying to make money from that art. It's really hard to sort of like make yourself stand out in a way, and there's a lot of competition, to be honest. There is, so you really need to try and make your artwork and your prints stand out. And the way I try and do this is I like to try and make my audience and my customers and my clients feel special. So art is a luxury item, as I've said plenty of times before. No one really needs art in their lives, but so the way I try and make my customers feel really special is I will offer the prints in such a way that makes them feel like they're getting a gift. So, you know, each print is professionally double mounted. I will never do this myself. I will always get my local framers to do this, because they just make everything look amazing. You know, I've recently just started doing white and white instead of sepia and white, because I think it just complements everything regardless of frame and things like that. As I said, I would never buy my maps online, because I just, you know, sometimes you can't get the right colour match between the paper and, you know, you can't really see what you're buying online, and things won't look right. And I don't like the single mount. I like everything to be double mounted. It feels sturdy, it feels secure, and I love it. Like, this is the highest professional grade that I can get, and you know, it's just the one thing that works for me, and it's the way I present my work. So from there, obviously, it is gift wrapped, it is ribboned. I have write a personal thank you note. I will make another video as to how I, you know, carefully package up my prints, because I know so many of you have asked, you know, how, you know, I ship internationally and things like that. At the end of the day, your customers are buying a piece of art, especially at the moment with the pandemic. Is really, really, like, no one, as I keep saying, no one really needs art. So you need to really make them feel like they're, you know, they're getting value for money, they're like a bespoke service, so to speak. So you need to make them feel special, and show them that you appreciate them buying into you as a person, as an artist, and as basically like a thank you for sticking by you, especially through this really difficult time. I hope, you know, this video has proved that creating fine art prints can be a really, really great way to add value to your business. It can generate another passive income stream. There's a lot of things to consider. I know there's a huge amount of things to consider. As I said, I'll try and put all this content into like a PDF file for you, so you can sort of break it down and come back to later. It'd be a really, really great source to earn a little bit of cash. As I said, you know, you don't really have to do an awful lot more work, apart from obviously mounting them, printing them if you do it in-house, putting a mount around them and packaging them and gift wrapping them, which can take a long time, I'll be honest, but the reward is fantastic. As I said, there's a huge amount to think about. Hopefully this hasn't been like a really overwhelming video. I'm trying to give you as much content as I possibly can, because I genuinely do appreciate you sticking by me, especially through the pandemic. my, you know, there's a lot of things that are changing for me at the moment within the business, and I really want to be able to take you along that journey with me, and hopefully, you know, you'll see my business grow as well as I'll be able to help your business grow too. So anyway, as always, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's been informative. I hope it's been useful. Any questions, as always, drop them either in the comments, send me a message, and I will try and help you as best I can. As I said, a huge thank you for sticking by me, and I will see you in the next one. But for now, I'm gonna wish you good night from this garden, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.